Hello, Jim Townsend. I have a website at townsend.b. This is part 2 of my little missive here, God Busted by the RCMP for Growing Pot. I do have a book online at GentileDefenseLeague.net, and you will actually find this little brochure. If you go down and look into the book, you'll find this little missive so that you can read it online there as well. If you're online and you go to GentileDefenseLeague.net, just click on save and save the page, and then you can read it without being connected to the internet and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so carrying on there, I'll just reiterate what I said. Hang on. Now that is a real quandary. From the Governor General on down, these people are ruling our lives with a de facto government whose authority is titular only and possesses no executive authority. Now this is actually a screenshot right off the government's own webpage, and do you see there where it says the Governor General carries out Her Majesty's duties in Canada on a daily basis and is Canada's de facto head of state? Do you see that thing there? Section 15 of the Criminal Code about obedience to de facto law that says no person shall be convicted of an offense in respect of an act or omission in obedience to the laws for the time being made and enforced by persons in de facto possession of the sovereign power in and over the place where the act or omission occurs. One thing Canadians should be aware of is that Canada, Australia, and Britain are all signatory to the Geneva Convention. And it's a violation of the Geneva Convention to impress the laws of one member nation in another member nation. So this is even defies the Geneva Convention. These people playing this law game in our country and stealing everything under color and guise of law in our courts. Okay, so looking at the aforementioned, I think the marijuana issue is pretty easily settled. When the yellow-striped Anglican Church RCMP Army officer commits the offense of champerty and marches you into the Crown's ecclesiastical court, which is committing the offense of barratry, to answer for what they have deemed to be immoral or unethical behavior and a violation of one of their maritime codes, and ask you to swear an oath on the Bible that tells you to swear no oaths. Read it for yourself in the Bible, Matthew 5:17-48. Point to the source of authority on the wall above him and ask the judge to call forth God to testify in his defense. If he can't command forth God after judging that God has made an error in judgment in the first place by giving you the marijuana plants, it is going to place him in an interesting position, isn't it? Does the judge have the right to sit in the judgment of his God that he gets his authority from? Since the judge sits confidently in judgment of you, though the Bible that the Queen is sworn to uphold and that he says he derives his authority from says, "Judge not lest ye be judged," that's Matthew 7:1, he should have no problem talking directly to God on this one and summoning him to get some insight into the illegitimacy of this God-inspired Anglican Church Bar Association law industry, which rules our lives in micro-detail under the pretense of divine right and the fear of being shot to death by a coffee-hyped Queen's Donut dunker. Read about divine crown lawyers. Matthew 23, Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciple, "The rabbis of the Torah and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy loads and put them on men's shoulders, but they are not willing to lift a finger to remove them." These are our golden rulers. Judaism, more correctly UN Zionism, is a religion of banking laws enforced by a global moneyed elite that seeks to enslave the entire earth. Banking is fraud, and banks play a game called bankruptcy using a financial scam called a mortgage. Death, gage, wager. You put up your money and the bank monetizes it and loans you back your own money at a pie rate, 3.14 times what you borrowed. Read Deuteronomy 20:20 to see if it's happening by accident. The New Testament is Christ's denial of the Old Testament Torah. By putting the Old and New Testaments together, it keeps the Torah from being banned as hate literature and converts Christians to Jewish thinking, worshiping the cross his enemies crucified him on instead of the Savior and his message, a deception worthy of Satan himself. Read John 8:42-44. For centuries, the British Crown of Israel and their Jewish monarchs have been the world's largest drug dealers. That is why the $24 billion a year marijuana industry in BC is more than the total value of all the forest products exports, plus double that of Canada's entire agricultural exports to the U.S. Is it too obvious that the unlawful marijuana legislation is no more than a corporate monopoly control mechanism? The only reason marijuana is illegal is to use this plant that everybody obviously wants as an excuse to rob you in their courts. Remember, the proceeds of all crime go to the Crown Treasury. Everything they make illegal is just another reason and tool to take everything you own under color and guise of law. Look in the Canadian Criminal Code, which is the legal gobbledygook of this foreign criminal enterprise. It defines the Canadian Armed Forces as Her Majesty's Forces raised by Canada. The Jewish gods cannon fodder. And now you know why we are involved in a Jew-Arab war over opium poppies in Afghanistan. Maybe we can pin poppies on the chests of our dead children, lest we forget what Her Majesty is using our army and police for. Subjecting our nation to the British enslaved UN nations is treason. By deception they wage war. When all final decisions devolve to the courts, all final decisions devolve to the judiciary. Interesting to note that 6 of 9 Supreme Court justices in Canada are Jewish, but then so is 50% of our Senate. Now that's an odd demographic for a nation of such diverse cultural heritage. Good thing they're loyal Canadians and not Israeli agents taking over our nation from within, eh? And of course I'm being facetious there. You know, when I first moved out to BC to get out from under the thumb of CRA agents totally out of control and committing criminal code violations against us, I moved out to Cherryville. Rented a place off a landlord, and they had a marijuana grow operation. I asked them nicely to move it, and when they refused, I just, right in front of the landlady, pulled them up and fed them to my goats. I didn't want to have to contend with it. Well, then we got an eviction notice. We got evicted for our goats eating plants around the property. The most bizarre thing ensued after that. We were, of course, evicted by a landlord tenant fellow that was an arbitrator who never even opened up our complaint, who I believe was just simply paid off by Don and Norman Lose in this whole debacle. Every time I mentioned that it was marijuana plants, for some reason he shut off the tape recorder and told me I could not mention that these were illegal plants that we had simply removed from the property because we did not want to be legally liable for something that is a criminal code violation. Now the really odd thing about this was we had to go in and put in legal paperwork, and every time we delivered the legal paperwork to the Lozes, they called the cops on us, and the cops came out and threatened to charge us for going over to their place and making threats to them. So we got in the habit of going over there with a witness, and I have signed witnesses that we did no such thing. We go into Kelowna to give these people from this arbitration hearing our legal paperwork. Imagine my surprise to get back to my home in Cherryville, find my 4 kids all freaked out. My eldest daughter was only 14 years old, who told me that the cops had come to the door and demanded to get our wood stove so that we would have no heat in our house. And while my children cowered in the bedroom because they were afraid of this cop that arrived to the door, 6.5-foot tall bugger with a gun, told my daughter that he wanted to come in, and they seized our wood stove. The cops seized our wood stoves. These cops run these grow operations out in Cherryville and Fauquier and Edgewood. Lillian Liberty, the wife of a former RCMP officer, claimed that her ex-RCMP officer is the biggest grow operator out in Edgewood. These cops, on any amount of occasions I know, have covered their own asses with their grow operations out here. Think about it, a $25 billion a year industry. There's an awful lot of judges and lawyers and cops that are involved in this. You see the cops, they talk about, oh, a couple $1 million worth of pot and some guns that they got. No, they're disarming people is what they're doing, and they're going after the little hippie grow operators, but they're leaving the big grow operators who are all in their own little cliques and sanctimonious in hell as hell in their own little churches that their RCMP officers and everybody else goes in. You're phony as fuck, and you know what, I got yous on video too, so stay off of my ass. And I'm talking to you there, Constable Prost. Don't be showing up and buggering around with me anymore. I'm going to tell you something. If you want to play your stupid game and you want to play sanctimonious, maybe you should tell your daughter not to post her friggin' pictures on Facebook or on Facebook with a beer in her hand and a joint in the other one when she's clearly underage. Stay away from my family, stay away from me. That's all I want, is just to be left alone. Keep your marijuana friggin' operations out of my face. Yes, I smoke pot, and I'm not going to pull over and let you rape me on the side of the road and steal my vehicles anymore. So the only thing I got to say to the RCMP freaking criminals in Canada is bugger off and leave me alone. Thank you. Peace, y'all. Love you. Have a good day. But you got to quit